So we'll call this meeting to order at 9:33 of the Sacramento Regional County Sanitation District and Sacramento Area Sewer Districts, and ask Madam Clerk, please call the roll and establish quorum.
Good morning. Member Bruins?
Present.
Member Harris?
Here.
Frost?
Here.
Hume?
Here.
Kennedy? Loloe?
Here.
Singh Allen?
Present.
Sander? Thank you. Natoli?
Here.
Orozco?
Here.
Howell? Cerna?
Here.
Valenzuela?
Here.
Bang?
Here.
Villegas?
Here.
And Desmond?
Here.
And you do have a quorum.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm very pleased to be joined in chambers today by Director Natoli and Director Villegas, and I'd ask Director Natoli to please lead us in the pledge.
Okay, please rise. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America,
the United States of America,
for which it
to the
stands,
republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you, Director Natoli. Madam Clerk, please read the statement for public comment procedures.
This meeting of the Sacramento Regional County Sanitation District and Sacramento Area Sewer District is being broadcast live on Metro Cable 14, the local government affairs channel on the Comcast Consolidated Communications and AT&T Uverse cable systems. This meeting is closed captioned and live streamed at metro14live.saccounty.gov. Today's meeting will replay Sunday, September 18th at 9 a.m. on Channel 14. This meeting can also be viewed at youtube.com/MetroCable14. In accordance with Government Code 54952.3, compensation for meeting of these legislative bodies is required to be verbally disclosed. The amount of $100 will be paid for each member participating today as a member of the Sacramento Regional County Sanitation District, and the amount of $100 will be paid for each board member participating today as a member of the Sacramento Area Sewer District. Compensation for Sacramento County supervisors and City of Sacramento council members is paid to the county and city respectively to partially offset the costs of those governments. Compensation for other board members is delivered to the individuals. In compliance with the directives of the County, State, and Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, this meeting is live streamed and open to public attendance pursuant to health and safety guidelines. The practice of social distancing and wearing of face coverings, mask, or shield is recommended for the health and safety of all persons participating in person during the meeting, although it is not required. To make a public comment, please complete a speaker request form and hand it to the clerk. The chairperson will call your name when it is your turn to make a comment. Members of the public may also dial 916-875-2501 and follow the prompts. When the chair opens public comment for a specific agenda item or off-agenda matter, callers will be contacted by phone and transferred into the meeting to make their public comment. You may also send written comment to boardclerk@saccounty.gov, and your comment will be routed to the board and filed in the record. And that concludes my announcements.
Okay, thank you. And then we'll move on to our Sanitation District consent matters, items 1 and 2. Do we have any comments or questions from members?
I'm happy to move consent, Mr. Chair.
I will second that. No.
Okay, we have a motion, a second. Any public comment on either of these consent items?
Just checking really quick. We do not have any public comment for items 1 and 2.
Okay, then if there are no further comments from directors, then I'd ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Bruins?
Aye.
Harris?
Aye.
Frost?
Aye.
Hume?
Aye.
Loloe?
Aye.
Singh Allen?
Aye.
Sander?
Aye.
Natoli?
Aye.
Orozco? Howell? Cerna?
Aye.
Valenzuela?
Yes.
Bang?
Yes.
Villegas?
Aye.
And Chair Desmond.
Aye.
And the motion carries with those members present.
All right, thank you. Next, item number 3 is off-agenda public comments. Do we have any off-agenda?
We do not have any off-agenda public comments.
Okay. Then we'll move on to Sanitation District separate matters, item 4.
Item number 4 is discussion and direction to staff on the biogeneration facility project procurement approach.
Okay, thank you, and I'll turn it over to Steve. Morning, Steve.
Good morning, Chair. Sorry, they only work when I'm looking down. Good morning, Chair and members of the board.
Morning, Steve.
If this goes 2 hours today, like May, it's not my doing. My presentation's pretty brief today, which is good news. I'll start with that. So, good morning. I'm Steve Nabozic. Can you bring up the presentation for item 4, please? Thank you. I'm Steve Nabozic, and today I'm going to be presenting an update on the biogeneration facility procurement.
Yes, I was going to say.
There we go. I'm going to touch on the background and what we've been working on to advance the project since receiving your feedback in May. Then I'm going to share key aspects of the revised approach, our procurement plan and scoring criteria, and I'll close up the formal presentation with anticipated future board updates. At the May 25th board meeting, we had an extended discussion on allowing fuel cells to compete alongside internal combustion engines in the biogen procurement. That discussion was followed by direction from your board to include fuel cells moving forward. In response, we've taken the following action to further Biogen's development. We've met with and discussed the project with fuel cell providers in the Air District. We've canceled the engine-specific procurement and are nearing completion on a new request for qualifications. And we're beginning work on other project documents for a fixed-price design-build procurement. We've also released a new industry outreach project briefing, which includes relevant information on the approach that I'll be sharing with you today. The discussion today is really intended to ensure that your direction from May has been sufficiently considered and allow your board the opportunity to add additional input that can be incorporated into the procurement approach. Before moving on, I also want to share what we've been up to with hydrogen, since that remains a consideration of the project. We've met with Cal OSHA, the Public Utilities Commission, and also work with council and industry groups related to covered process regulations and how they may limit our ability to send hydrogen off-site. There's a lot of clarity needed before Regional San can fully define the role we might be able to play in a future hydrogen market, but this project is being developed to be hydrogen ready and adapt to what future discussions reveal. With the revised procurement approach, there are 3 options for interested parties to consider, which means within this single procurement, the proposed Biogen project will now include approximately 12 megawatts of installed capacity of engines or fuel cells or both. And while the allowable technologies being considered have been expanded, the solution-driven scope from the initial procurement remains unchanged. No matter what technology or combination thereof is being proposed, participants will have to meet the following pass-fail whole project requirements, and they include on-site use of all gas, provide heat for our digesters and campus needs, produce electrical power to offsite the plant's use, include N+1 redundancy for the main generation technology, include a standby boiler for heat redundancy, and include full redundancy for the power distribution equipment.
Mr. Chair, can I just ask a question for Steve leaves that slide?
Yes.
Yes, Steve, just on that, what of that 12 megawatts, what's the estimated consumption or needs for the plant for the bullets 2 and 3 for adequate heating, for digesters and campus heating, as well as for the electrical production to offset the treatment plant's usage? So is that a full offset? Is it a portion? And so what proportion is going to be retained for meeting the needs on site?
So I'll I'll try to answer that because it differs a little. So as far as the electricity goes, we can use 100% of the gas we can offset. We can use all the gas and offset our energy use, and we're not needing to export. We use a lot of energy. As far as where we meet our heat demands, probably around 6 megawatts in, 6 to 8 megawatts in of the project total.
Okay, so of the project total, then about half to a little less would be available then for other, I guess, uses.
Well, the
generation of hydrogen, or for, I guess. Well, you said you could use it all on site, so I guess you're going to craft this in a way. I'm just trying to understand, as you get a lot of components, you're giving a lot of thought to this, and as I read the staff report last night, I didn't know if there was more, and I think this is illustrative of what you're, have considered. So I'm just trying to get some sense about when you put this out to the proposers.
Because of the amount of vagueness on how we might be able to play in the hydrogen market, and when you consider the covered process regulations and things, recall a long discussion from the 25th, we are doing this as a fixed price, design build, owned project to get out of covered process regulations. We want to do the right thing with hydrogen, but we want to do it in a manner and a stepwise approach to make sure we don't fall back right into the same regulation. With that said, our goal...
And Steve, just to clarify, that requires it to still be owned by Regional Sand and all the power generated from it to be consumed on site, correct? That's how we avoid...
That is correct, and that is really what that is our goal for day one. But if we make progress in the hydrogen arena and those discussions we're having right now with Cal OSHA, with Public Utilities Commission, if we make enough progress there to define what hydrogen could look like and how we may be able to participate during this procurement, the procurement remains hydrogen ready for us to be able to pull that trigger. Our goal is to start the project on day one with all gas being used for heat, power, and offsetting plant needs.
Let me offer one clarification that might help you, Director Natoli. The bullet item number 3 that says produce electric power to offset the treatment plant's usage, it's not intending necessarily to offset all of the treatment plant's usage. It's just that this project is we're going to use as much of the power as we can towards offsetting that usage. But
so it's proportional in the sense that if you have hydrogen generation, then that's going to come out of the equation, but you would still, whatever is generated as it relates to electricity, 1% or 100%, we'll be able to use it. You'll take it, you'll use it. Okay.
Yeah.
And just one other thing, though, so when it comes to adequate heat for the digesters and the campus heating, you're already cutting out about a half of this already? Is that right, of the megawatts? If I heard you correctly a moment ago, you said 6 to 8 megawatts for that usage.
So if there were, I should have I have to clarify that. With engines, that's what we're most familiar with because that's what we were working on for so long. With internal combustion engines, about somewhere 6 to 8 megawatts of energy being produced will give us will provide us our heat needs.
So is it that could hydrogen provide the necessary heating capacity to run the digesters?
Hydrogen, really the aspect of hydrogen, it's kind of it's almost like an offshoot that has grown out of this project. Mm-hmm. The main driver and the main focus of our project from Regional Sands perspective, from the staff perspective, is the heat and the power. Mm-hmm. And we're trying to do the best that we can to play whatever role that we can and set the project up accordingly to be able to adapt to the role that we might be able to play in the hydrogen market, which is, to my understanding, from the CARB, the State Air Board perspective, and the local air district perspective, really going to be geared to getting vehicle-ready hydrogen as fuel.
Okay.
It is a component that we don't have any on-site uses for hydrogen. We're trying to set this project up to be adaptable enough to be able to help provide the state, maybe the region, some hydrogen transportation fuel.
So can I just ask one other question? And again, I know you're trying to be flexible here, and I don't want to interrupt your flow of presentation, but so because I was not at the meeting on May 25th, but I certainly have read the material and heard some of the conversation since then. If they took 100% for hydrogen, then we would have to find a way to fuel the digesters and buy power from SMUD or whoever we buy it off the grid in order to compensate for what we would anticipate would either be a proportional and or, I guess, depending upon how proposers propose this, a full contribution from this project to the plant needs, because you could take it all, you could use it all. But if all of it went away, then we're going to have to backfill. And are those costs calculated into the overall scoping here?
Well, the cost we're focused on right now is using all of our gas on site in engines or fuel cells for heat and power. And really what I think our goal is to start increasing. We have an organic study that's getting ready to kick off. Use today and 2025 as our baseline in gas production that is devoted to on-site heat and power, and work on increasing gas as the hydrogen market develops through an organics program, and let that stream of gas that we create when we create more gas on site, let that, if there is a window to provide opportunity to the hydrogen market and stay out of covered process regulations, use that gas instead of upsizing with fuel cells or engines and get it off-site to the transportation sector is kind of our vision.
Okay, well, but that vision will have to be somewhat expressed in your RFP so folks know going in if they're going to propose on this, but also for, this board going forward at some juncture a few years out, kind of what, where those junctures in the road may be as relates to either growing the organics market or something akin to that. So I guess I was just trying to be clear here, and I know you're trying to be duly flexible here to allow for proposals of all types, but when I saw these bullets, it made me think somehow you may end up at a point where you're gonna potentially clash a little bit, I guess, if that's a proper term. So
let me add one piece of clarification that might help. When we're taking our biogas and we're essentially converting it into another form of energy. It can be heat, it can be electricity, or it can be hydrogen. The hydrogen and the electricity are kind of going to offset each other. Okay. So if we're taking off more hydrogen, then we're not going to generate as much electricity. The heat is kind of a byproduct. So if, for example, either engines or fuel cells, maybe to a slightly less extent, but both of those create heat. So that's just a waste, essentially. So we're going to use that heat in the digesters.
Okay.
We're going to capture it. But it's not like it's taking away the first 6 to 8 megawatts of power generation to create the heat. The heat is just going to be there.
Okay, that does help, because again, in my simple mind, I don't have the engineering background to, what you've explained to me, though, now I understand, at least as it relates to the heat. So thanks, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Director Natoli. I think Director Harris, you have your hand raised. Jeff?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Actually, I would like to keep my comments until after the presentation is complete, if you'd call on me at that time.
Okay, perfect. All right, Steve, go ahead.
All right. So, as far as the schedule goes, we intend to release the request for qualifications in late October, receive statements of qualifications by the end of this year. That'll be followed by Regional Sands shortlist selection, and then release of the request for proposals early next year. Proposals will be due in the middle of 2023, with a final selection a couple months after that. As indicated on the previous slide, it's a two-step process. We're doing the request for qualifications and the request for proposals as required by the public contract code for a design build procurement. Regional sands previously included strict minimum sizing and experience requirements have been removed from the procurement as requested by your board to allow fuel cells to participate. The goal of the request for qualifications step is to shortlist qualified DB teams, which typically includes the contractor and the engineer. Respondents will be asked to submit qualifications to support their proposed technology. And that means teams considering an engine fuel cell hybrid solution will be asked to submit qualifications for both technologies. There's no pricing at the RFQ stage, and qualification scores will not carry over to the RFP step. The goal of the request for proposal step is to select the DB team whose proposal delivers the best value to regional SAN. And that means meeting all the pass-fail solution-driven requirements that are essential to the operation of the plant, meeting the established performance and efficiency requirements for the installed system, and then we take a step back and let the DB teams propose their best solution. When the proposals come in, they'll be ranked on price and technical merit. Price, which is 40 points, includes the sum of the design build price, the extended commissioning price, and the 10-year extended warranty and maintenance price. And that design build price, as it sits right now, also will include the cost of the hydrogen-ready technology. The technical merit, which is 60 points, includes the DB team's ability to demonstrate how their proposal meets or exceeds the minimum requirements and delivers the best value to regional SAN. So these are the areas that the 60 points on technical merit of the proposals will be scored. Further details on each of these are going to be included in the request for qualifications, so the interested parties have enough information available on how to win to be able to choose which technology option they want to pursue and form their teams. I'm not planning to read out or go over every bullet. These will be thoroughly vetted out in detail in the procurement documents. Really, the intent here is to make it clear it's not a low bid project, it's a value-driven selection, but price is important too. We anticipate future board updates would include shortlist results and proposal selection results. Your board will also be asked to approve the design build contract, and intermediate project updates will be provided as needed to cover items such as project status, hydrogen development, and funding opportunities. And with that, we can get into the questions.
Okay. Thank you, Steve. We'll all go right to Director Harris.
Thank you, Chair. Steve, thank you for the presentation. And I'd just like to say that clearly staff has listened well to board direction from the last meeting. I really like this approach. I think this is a great way to set up this RFQ. I like it because the consolidated risk transfer to the design build team. What we asked staff to do is create an opportunity for fuel cell technology to have a chance at this project while meeting the needs of regional SAN for both electricity and heat, but also to reduce emissions and the possibility of hydrogen production to use in the region. So multi-benefits. Honestly, this approach, I'm not sure it could be better. I'm very encouraged by what staff has come up with here. And frankly, I don't have any comments to alter it at all. I think we should put this out on the timeline that staff has proposed and move forward with this approach. I do think that the technology is there, but yet it still has to be demonstrated. And I know that staff has had extensive discussions with Fuel Cell and Bloom Energy, and this is great. I think this opens the door to a very creative approach. to energy needs and addressing our climate issues in the region. So staff, I just want to thank you, Christoph and Steve, and everybody who worked on this. I think you've done a great job. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Director Harris. Any other members with comments or questions?
I do not see anyone else in Zoom with their hand raised.
Okay, I have one. Then I'll move to public comment. I have one speaker signed up, Mr. Avdis. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Nick Avdis with the law offices of Avdis and Cucci. Thank you for your time this morning. I'm here on behalf of Fuel Cell Energy, and we appreciate the time on the agenda, and we do want to extend our appreciation to staff. Since May 25th, we have had the opportunity to talk to staff at length about a lot of things we talked about today, and so we're very encouraged, as Member Harris has stated, about where this is going. I think fuel cell technology deserves a fair shake, and it appears that that's sort of the direction it's going. I did want to have just a brief comment on the point scoring. We do appreciate that GHG and criteria pollutants were included in the technical scoring. I think we would ask that, additional scoring or additional points be considered to be given for projects that guarantee that emissions and GHG profile through the life of the project. I think that would provide, certainly an opportunity for the district to guarantee the emissions goals over the life of the project. And so we'll look forward to making a proposal and working through the process. Thank you very much, and that's it.
Thank you very much. I didn't even need to start the timer. Now, Steve, I don't know if Steve or Christoph, could you respond to that point about the scoring? Any thoughts or feedback?
I think it's something we can accommodate, but I'll ask Steve if he wants to make a comment.
It's something we can. It is the. Sorry, just never get used to this. What Mr. Advis is asking for is really the intention of that criteria being in there. He mentioned it being over the, our intention is that folks will have to provide the profile of what their emissions are for both greenhouse gases and criteria pollutants. For the whole project, again, we talked about the box last time, not the box around a fuel cell or an engine, but for all our heating and, a box around regional SAN, filling all of our needs, those are the emission profiles that we will be asking for. Whole project emissions, criteria pollutants, greenhouse gases under normal operations, and those could be expanded over to and extrapolated to any type of life we want to look at for the project.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Any other comments from directors, or actually any other public comment? I'm sorry, Alma.
We do not have any online public comments.
Okay, well then there's no.
Mr. Chair?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry.
Mr. Chair, this is Director Cerna.
Oh, yes, Director Cerna.
Thank you. So I feel like I would be remiss if I didn't share my thoughts and offer a few comments. Since this started months ago with some interest that I expressed to our staff and to colleagues that we explore the opportunity that we could make this a better project, one that not just satisfies the needs of regional SAN, but equally, if not more important, really and sincerely attempts to address emissions and to do it thoughtfully. And certainly, as a member of the California Air Resources Board, I am very pleased to see that staff has done the job that they have to get us to this point. I know there was initially some skepticism or maybe even reluctance to consider the prospect of hydrogen generation. But I think, as we can all see as directors, staff has clearly listened, and I'm glad to see that. I'm glad to see that reflected in the product that is before us for consideration today, and certainly want to express my appreciation to Steve and Christoph and the rest of the staff that have worked diligently on this, and hopefully we can all look back at some point and say it was the right thing to do, so that we can not just meet our needs as I expressed from a regional stand perspective, but perhaps even play a role in advancing the technology. So again, thanks to everyone that has made this happen.
Great, thank you very much, Director Suna, for the comments. Any other comments from board members that you're seeing?
I do not see anyone else with their hand raised.
Okay, well, I don't think there's any board action on this. I just want to echo the comments, thanking staff, Steve and Christoph, and I think this also is very exciting and an opportunity for regional sand really to set a new standard with this new technology. It's I think a great opportunity for us. So, am I right, Council? No action on this. Okay. Okay, then we will move on to item number 5. Sanitation District, separate matter.
Item number 5 is regional sanitation sewer impact fees related to tiny homes.
Okay. Good morning, Dave.
Good morning. Dave Ochnacek from Policy and Planning. No PowerPoint presentation today, just a few words to kick things off. This is regarding tiny homes. At the April 13th, 2022 Regional Board meeting, your board requested a report back on how regional sand sewer impact fee structure could support construction of tiny homes. At the time, we were aware of one resident from West Sacramento who was interested in constructing a tiny home on a separate lot in West Sacramento and requested a reduced sewer impact fee. Your board requested a report back to discuss wastewater studies or evaluations performed by other sanitation districts that may support lower sewer impact fees for tiny homes. So to put it into context, a tiny home is just that. It is a full home. Generally, they're about 400 square feet or smaller, and they're very creatively put together, I will say. They have a bathroom, kitchen, etc. County code actually recognizes tiny homes, basically just says that it needs to be on a foundation, it needs to meet county code requirements, but they cannot be on wheels. So in other words, it can't be a trailer or something to that effect. I'm pointing that out. We did get a couple of emails yesterday, and I wanted to differentiate that from what was expressed in some of those emails, which was a homeless, something to account for homelessness. And we have, the county's working on a safe stay community, which is multiple small units just like this, multiple small units on a single lot. And that, I think we've got a different way to approach that type of dwelling unit. These are not ones where they are designated as a very low income type home. So it differentiates a little bit from what it is. Structurally, they look pretty similar, but in what they're intended to do, there's some differences. So I wanted to make sure I pointed that out. With regard to the impact fees, regional sand charges one dwelling unit for a tiny home, no different from any other single-family residential connection. Regional sand's sewer impact fees are lower for two other classes, the multifamily dwelling and dwellings that are in a community that's designated as age-restricted. Those fees were determined through a class study that we conducted several years ago. And as a result of that class study, where we come up with an average flow and load, we came up with the lower fee structures for those types of dwellings. They're 0.75 for a multifamily dwelling and 0.6 for an age-restricted community. The class study was done several years ago, and at the time, there were no communities of tiny homes. And as it stands right now, we are still not aware of any communities of tiny homes that we would do a similar type of class study for. And a collection of them is important because we have to do some averaging of the flows and loads in order to understand what their contributions are to the wastewater system. And that's how we had done the multifamily and the age-restricted communities. So as it stands, we're still not in a situation where we understand a community where we'd be able to do a similar type class study. We also reached out to the California Association of Sanitation Agencies to see if they had any ideas up and down the state whether or not another sanitation agency had a fee structure for tiny homes. And CASA has 128 wastewater agencies in California, so they're very well representative of the state. And we really didn't get any responses. One came back and said, hey, if someone else has a fee structure, they would like to know. But otherwise, we got no responses out of all of those wastewater agencies. So that really just concludes my introductory comments. There's no action by your board requested today, but a suggestion that as jurisdictions become more aware and attuned to tiny homes and start developing incentives for them, that we would be willing to work with them and see what we can do for a different fee structure.
Okay. Well, thank you, Dave. I see that Director Valenzuela, Director Natoli, then Director Loloi. So we'll start with Director Valenzuela.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, staff, for the presentation. I had a question about, because I know we're talking about a tiny home on a separate parcel, about how it would work if there was a tiny home on a parcel with another structure, similar to like an ADU. How is that ranked differently right now under our system?
Yes, our regional SAN ordinance has an account for an ADU, an accessory dwelling unit. So one additional accessory dwelling unit, sometimes called a granny flat, is allowed, and that's allowed without any additional charge.
Okay, and if there was a second or more?
Second or more, that becomes, I believe that we start looking to charge extra for additional ADUs.
Okay, and then what would the rate be for that? Would it be the same as a single family detached home?
Yes.
Okay. I ask those questions because I see these as kind of linked issues, even though I know in this context we're talking about a tiny home on a detached parcel that, we obviously want to incentivize different ways of building homes. And if these are physically smaller properties, it feels like there should be a way to scale appropriately the rates. Like state law recently passed, for instance, that guarantees property owners the ability to do 2 ADUs on their properties by right, as long as they can meet certain criteria. And so I guess for me, this is something that I would like us to continue to work on. I don't know what that looks like, and would look to Christoph and the chair for any direction there. But I do think it warrants, this has started an important conversation in my mind about how do we incentivize these different forms of growth as we continue to pursue this. And ADUs are one example of this, but I think they're related to this question of tiny homes and how do we look at different types of structures and whether they warrant different rates. So I'll defer to Christoph on this and the chair if there's any direction, but I think specifically when it comes in this context of ADUs, I would like to see us talk about and continue to examine what potentially a scaled rate similar to what we're looking at for multifamily. Is it 0.6? Is it 0.75? How do we do that? And maybe looking to ADUs, which are a little bit more common than tiny homes right now on properties, could give us a good benchmark for data collection purposes. But that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Valenzuela. Christoph or Dave, would you like to respond?
Sure. Just a couple of thoughts, and I think it looks like we have some hands up too.
Yeah.
One of the things that I feel like, even though it's great that we're talking about this, I still feel like it's premature for the sanitation district because there's not really enough. If you just take a one-off, a single tiny home, it will not change any costs for the sanitation district. And in order to get a reduced fee, you have to show that you have reduced the cost. It would have to be, a community. It would have to be a subdivision or something more larger scale to have any effect. We still have to build the sewer across the property. And it's not going to really change the size until you get many of them. So part of this is, I feel like the sanitation district should be lagging behind the city or county who's starting to develop the standards for how, where do these go, how many of them, how dense they are. Then we can react to that. And that's why we've kind of deferred and said, let's wait until we have some more information. And then beyond that, the study that Dave mentioned is very difficult to do with something like this. You have to get a lot of them together in order to get enough flow, in order to measure it, to have it statistically valid. And so I would even look at maybe using confluence funds as a way to reduce the cost before I would go to an alternate fee structure. Might be a different way to approach it. And so those are my comments for now.
Sorry, Chair, if I may just respond briefly to that, because Christoph, I don't know if you totally understood my angle of my comments, so I just want to re-clarify. When I talk about, we already have done the ADU stuff at the cities and counties. It's state law that was signed last year, and so those changes are in the works. And so I think there is precedent to at least start looking at these smaller standalone structures in context of the fact that we've already started doing that work for ADUs. And maybe it leads to more work on specifically tiny homes that are standing alone. Maybe it really just applies in the context of a tiny home that's on a lot with another structure. But those changes have already started. And so if I'm hearing correctly from staff that if you have a second ADU, you're charged the same as you would be if you had a second full family home on the parcel, that to me already warrants the conversation continuing past this item.
Yeah, no, I think I understood what you were saying. I just want to make it clear that at this point in time, we don't have enough of these. It feels like it has to be advanced further within one of our jurisdictions, at least one of our jurisdictions, so that we can then react to it. It's still it feels like a paper exercise at this point.
Well, let me just chime in. So I mean, obviously, in the ADU world, things are evolving quickly, and some jurisdictions are doing different things. But if a second ADU is allowed by right, for instance, in the city of Sacramento, is it? I don't even know if that's the case. I mean, that's not a hypothetical. If that's the case, it's not a hypothetical situation. It's probably something we should be thinking about right now. And so perhaps you can have that discussion maybe directly with Director Valenzuela as well. But okay, well, I will. Let's move on to Director Natoli.
Some of the points that I was going to talk to have already been, I think, addressed certainly by Director Valenzuela's comments and Christoph's response. But one of the things that occurred to me, and again, recognizing that we're a partner to the development, certainly provision of housing and other built infrastructure in our community, certainly the vertical infrastructure. And I guess one of the things that occurred to me as I read the staff report, certainly Dave summarized that in his comments, that this district has been a leader in many, many respects. And, we're recognized for our leadership, our good work in so many different realms. And I think with not just with what the state is telling counties and cities we have to do as it relates to trying to accommodate certainly the demand for housing of all types. But again, we play a critical role in that, and yet we have to make sure we cover, because we're an enterprise, cover the cost of connecting folks to the services, the utility that we provide, but also obviously maintaining that in a way that we can all be proud of and have the confidence that it's going to be here for a long, long time to come. So I guess one of the things that occurred to me, your outreach, obviously, a lot of folks haven't taken this on, and you've got plates that are full. But it would seem to me that maybe a convening of planning directors, or maybe even your city managers and your CEO of the county, or at least top deputies, would be a wise approach. And again, it might be a little off for Christoph to lead that, but I think certainly through our chair, and if this board was desirous of doing that, to convene folks, because again, this is something that is beginning to rise up as housing costs are continue to increase, and demand just severely outpaces the ability for and again, we're not building the housing for the most part. The cities and counties are not doing that. It's a private development, and we incentivize that through some of the things we do and still cover our costs. But I do think tiny houses, and again, in order to do that analysis that you've certainly, related your comments to, Christoph, it's going to take quite a while to get there. But there may be some things that would, from a standpoint, it doesn't eliminate what the hard fixed costs are getting a connection to a particular dwelling unit and so forth. But if we know that these dwellings typically have only one bathroom, they may have a small kitchen or kitchenette. I mean, again, I don't want to put too much of a stereotype because, again, there may be a whole variety of variations. But it seems to me that our planning departments, if nothing else, to have a big huddle and to sit down and say that, can we be a part of helping to address this? We know we have obviously a specific request that, out of West Sacramento and a resident there. But that's not just entirely unique in the sense that there will be others. And again, you don't have a lot you can put on paper that can say, well, how can you reduce the cost without, again, impacting other users or certainly other customers that would either be coming into the system and or are part of the customer base. But I know the work that you did some years ago with regarding senior housing and certainly multifamily. But you had a whole, again, a universe that you could look to. But in this case, that universe is getting very small. So again, one thing that occurred to me, though, was to, if nothing else, to have that conversation with the jurisdictions that are part of regional sanitation district and say, this is a real request. There's been an interest by our board. Is there a way to help us get there so that the calculation may reflect something that this board then would have the ability to act upon that might be different than what we do now? Because I think it is, if people are in an economic situation that they're already, looking to the tiny house to be their primary dwelling, the connection fees can be a big hurdle. I mean, we've heard that from the one party, but I'm sure others may be thinking about it as well. So I guess I'd like to see us be a leader in this, but again, not leading a way that we're kind of out there, on the prairie and there's nobody else to talk to. So I think it would seem to me that to ask about this, and so I would. You can maybe pioneer in it, and in CASA, we'd be looking at this district as being someone who has really stepped up to do that in a way that's meaningful, that relates to our communities and our district and its functionality and certainly its ability to have a good economic standing, but also to maybe accommodate new customers who may have a different income framework, but also seeking to do housing, but still have to depend upon this utility to have a functional house or home. So again, I guess I would just offer that as a suggestion. Maybe that's a way, and maybe we could assist with the convening of that, and to have a serious discussion about how you can proceed, because maybe there's something you can do on paper in a framework that would give enough substance for this district and this district board to look at doing something that would apply a different calculation. May not be based solely in experience, because there isn't a lot of experience behind it, but would allow us to advance that discussion. So that's my thoughts. And Christoph, if you want to respond, fine. I just think there's maybe a way to move the ball a little bit down the field rather than waiting for someone to throw the pass to us. So,
yeah, I think we can do that, and get more. A better understanding of this. I am starting to see two different scenarios. I think now I better understand Director Valenzuela's point is when you have an existing home and then you're adding one of these on, that's a different situation than coming with a fresh lot and putting a tiny home on it. Because there's already infrastructure there. So I think those are two different scenarios. We have to think about those as well. So we can certainly go back and talk with planning directors and see if we can better understand what the approach is for these homes, and if there are some ways that we can get creative.
Okay. Thank you, Director Natoli. I know we have a few other directors. I think that's a great idea, and that's the best imagery. Running down the field and waiting for someone to throw us the pass. That was a good one. I'm going to use that again. But I think yeah, talking to the planning directors will also educate you about things going on here in the region that CASA may not know about, obviously, but help you inform what specific initiatives are already being undertaken in some of these local municipalities that this discussion could support. And I would also recommend, doing some outreach to affordable housing developers as well, because it might, if they know that something like this is potential someday, they may consider different products that they hadn't considered before. So I would just throw that in as well. Okay, I'll go down the list here. Looks like we have Director Loloe.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you to staff. Yes, I do have a question, and it comes back to the tiny homes. So if there is a community of tiny homes for certain income bracket, is there any kind of calculation for that kind of a scenario, or that's something that we need to look into and talk about?
There are fee waivers available for communities that would be put together and designated as very low income housing. So that exists right now, and maybe is where we'll go with the safe stay community. So there certainly is an accommodation that really goes straight towards, low income folks, potentially homeless folks. And our fee structure has the capability of handling that. This, again, is a little bit different with a single unit on a lot. So we do have, multifamily housing that's designated as, and it's actually recorded on the deed for, I believe it's 30 years, and SHRA has to certify that condition. And when that comes to us, then we have a function, we have a fee structure that can support that with a fee waiver.
So that would be true on these low-income facilities to be rental, correct?
I'm sorry, say that again?
To be rental properties?
Yes, usually they're rentals, yes.
If there is a scenario where there can be some ownership within 5-6 years, would these fee structures still apply?
That I'm not sure about.
I'm not sure it's based on the SHRA certification. I don't know the requirements of the certification.
Okay. I appreciate it. The reason I'm asking is because there might be a project coming into my district which would probably provide anywhere between 200 to 250 tiny homes. It's still at the beginning stage of just conversations, but I wanted to know, if I can get some information from this meeting to share with them. I thought that might be helpful. So is it safe to say that there are existing programs if there is a tiny home community that's being put together?
It has to do with the low income, though. So, and really, I would suggest that you check in with SHRA, because they're the ones that manage that program, and there might be some opportunity to, modify that or expand it. I don't know if it's something that is within their purview to do, but they're the ones that essentially certify that, and then the waivers are available. We just make the waivers available, and it's a waiver, so there's zero fee in that case.
But it requires the SHRA certification, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Director Laloy, Director Hume, and then Director Villegas.
Thank you, Chair, and I appreciate the conversation that's going on, because I think there can be drawn a correlation between the tiny homes and the ADUs, with a potential expectation that whatever is good for the goose will be expected to be good for the gander. And I appreciate Director Valenzuela's point that she made. I come at the similar quandary from a different perspective. The implementation of SB 9, which is the state law to which she referenced, could be problematic in the fact that the infrastructure for that original development was sized for a certain density. And with the units being allowed by right, you could potentially be doubling or even tripling the impact to that infrastructure. And so it could be a problem where we now find ourselves in a situation where our sewer infrastructure is undersized, and so the impact may be greater that we are giving away for free than where we have a new structure on a previously undeveloped lot. We're looking at that as a new impact. And so I think there is a lot to parse and unpack here relative to how this applies. And then I would kind of take on Director Laloy's comments and put a slightly different shift in that I see the potential for tiny homes to be a lifestyle choice for people and not necessarily a low-income alternative or an alternative for low-income folks. And so I think whether, and I do love the analogy of waiting for the pass to be thrown down the field or whether we advance the ball, this is worth having a discussion on what the true impacts of the district, what the equitable fee structure would look like. But I do think that, to Director Valenzuela's point, we need to take a closer look at what the impact of ADUs, which may or may not be tiny homes, and the impacts those have to our existing infrastructure. So I think there is a good discussion to be had here, and I would think that Director Natoli's suggestion of convening some sort of think tank to get out in front of this would be a good idea. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Hume. Director Villegas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No reason to restate it all. It's already been said. I appreciate staff's willingness to look into this. I think this issue is going to remain dynamic for us, and the ADU example is a perfect example of what we think we control on the front end with establishing our rate and fee structure, and then the state makes a change to the law that essentially gives by right the ability to essentially, in some cases, maybe even double the sewer capacity. So we're going to have to remain nimble in our approach to try to figure out how to best address what we are responsible for, but also be a party to a broader conversation about being good stewards of our environment. So I think while we may not necessarily need to lead the effort, we can certainly continue to convene conversations so that we're plugged in to thinking about what the region is looking at doing in the next 20, 25 years relative to housing. So I think it's all been said, but I like Director Natoli's recommendation.
Okay. Thank you, Director Villegas. I mean, I think some direction from the board here to staff that we'd like you to continue evaluating this, certainly, and convening with our local planning directors, and I would add on affordable housing developers as well, and maybe report back to this board, early in 2023. Any thoughts about that?
Yeah, I was going to say, Mr. Chair, it might be helpful, maybe a letter from you as the chair. Again, it's one thing to do kind of the one-offs, but I think getting folks in the room, either via, virtually or otherwise, to, sit down with our staff who, again, you're not, community planners, but you certainly are planners and engineers and folks that, know our system, I think, to Oscar and other folks' point. So, maybe an invitation, pick, a date that seems to work for folks. And, I think giving some time here, it doesn't have to necessarily be in the immediate future, but I think to pull that together and invite folks so that I think, and maybe that would go to the, either to the city managers or to the county executives or I guess to the planning directors, but that invitation, not that you couldn't do it on your own, and I'd be very capable of doing that, but I think there is some value in maybe calling people together because there's commonality in this issue, and there's a number of different aspects to it. So again, I just offer that suggestion. It's not to give anybody more word.
I'll work with Christoph on this. Is one of the many reasons I will miss you, Director Natoli, because the things I never even think about. That so I'll
staff's not going to miss it, though. I can tell you right now. Just more work.
We can help with that letter.
I don't see Director Laloy. Did you have an additional comment? Your hand is still raised.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just since we're having this discussion, I would really like the staff to also look at, if there are tiny home communities, and I think Director Hume made a great reference that it's becoming a lifestyle, and if the staff can consider if it's not a low income environment, but as an incentive for some developers to look at these tiny homes as a way of creating additional options for the residents. And if we can create an incentivize, the building of these tiny home communities, and if the staff can come back with that, that would be wonderful. I understand that the fees are waived if SHRA certifies it, but I would love to get some feedback on what if, we don't have that certification. Can we still continue with waiving the fees just to create an incentive for developers to continue with this concept of tiny home communities? Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Director Laloy. Any other directors with their hands raised that you can see, Alma?
I do not see anyone else.
Okay, we do have, I'll move to public comment. We do have one commenter in chambers, Robin Davis. Good morning, and I'll give you 3 minutes.
Okay, great. I have so much to say. I'll try to get it all in, but I'm Robin, and I live in a 160 square foot off-grid tiny home on wheels currently in the city of West Sacramento on my undeveloped residential property. I want to thank everybody on the board and Dave, thank you for the presentation, and especially Oscar, who took the time to understand my situation and move my questions forward. I've been asking my government to allow me to live in my home on my property legally and affordably for 2 years, all while at the same time the Sacramento region contributes to over 9,000 of the over 160 unhoused residents on California streets. The average cost to build one low-income housing unit is $750,000 in California. California is short 2 million units of housing for residents. The average home price is almost $900,000 in California. We have lost over 31,000 homes in fires since 2017. The state grid operator continues to warn residents of widespread blackouts, and 97% of the state's land area is in severe drought status. I only mention these well-documented facts because the Sacramento region has been presented with an opportunity to practice the progressive rhetoric they preach, and yet there's been little to no interest until now. My home is a possible solution to all of these issues California faces. It's made out of alternative materials, runs off solar, uses less than 25% of the average traditional home water usage. I did my own study on that by a separate engineer, and is an affordable housing option. So you can imagine my confusion when my community development director of West Sacramento suggested that I just leave the city instead of asking for affordable options. Or when Sacramento Regional Sewer staff told me the project does not qualify for a waiver because I'm not a wealthy developer. As I've navigated trying to learn this big, complex government system, I've learned much of the policies and ordinances being created are created for developers. Your fee waiver program is exclusively for developers while excluding the very people you claim to be trying to help. Government and developers have controlled what gets built for too long. Our choices continue to be limited to luxury or government subsidized with little to no options in between. Give the freedom to choose more diverse housing back to the people so that we can build our own affordable housing. Give the freedom and affordability to build back to the people so that we may have the option to live within our means. That's what I wrote. There's also studies already done. So Tiny Home Industry Association is already working on this, so I'd suggest bringing them into the conversation as well. The former city manager and redevelopment director in Fresno and Las Vegas, there's already tiny homes solo on these residential properties in Placer and Nevada. So there are options to look at, and there's plenty of people to reach out to that are willing to help Sacramento region and West Sacramento on these issues. So there's plenty of information out there. That's what I want to say. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Robin. Appreciate your comments. Okay, Director Natoli, did you have additional comments?
Yeah, it just occurred to me, and I know I had a chance to talk to Robin last year at a couple different occasions. I'm not sure she reached out to Oscar as well, but I guess the point that is emphasized in her comments, and it seemed to me maybe there's another alternative available to this district, and we use confluence monies for a variety of things to benefit this community, and if we're still early in the iterations of what may come out of a broader planning effort for the jurisdictions, and kind of working our way down through new laws and regulations that are telling cities and counties what they need to do or have to do. Maybe there's a way to structure it so that with certain criteria. Obviously, it'd have to be a policy matter before this board. And I wouldn't, it wouldn't be a gift of public funds. We have waiver categories that we fund through different aspects of district operations here to incentivize. But for a sole homeowner who doesn't meet the low income criteria but wants to, participate in a way that allows them to have a livable home, it may be considered more of an alternative approach now, but will be maybe more mainstream as more of these are, constructed and permitted. That might be an opportunity for this district to take a look at that. Again, those are non-fee, non-rate revenues. Again, we're still within the public realm, but to maybe look at a program that would provide an opportunity for, without having to get to that, what we were talking about earlier, this study that would take in a more holistic approach as it relates to, how you do the calculations and so forth. It would keep the district whole, but would certainly allow folks like Robin and maybe others who are in that particular area where they have a lot, they want to permit their structure, but they're still facing, the full connection fees for both districts. So I just offer that as a thought. I don't know if the staff's looked at that, but we've been very creative in our confluence approach and have done some really good work that, again, most districts probably haven't even thought about in this state. And this might be another one that would allow us to kind of bridge that while this other work goes on over the course, probably of a matter of a couple of years, I would imagine, if not longer. So I offer that as a suggestion.
And I actually suggest that would be a preferred approach to creating a fee structure, just because it is a very complicated and somewhat contradictory process, given that our current structure is all about one home equals one ESD. So using Confluence would be a creative way to do that if it was on a small scale. Obviously, there's a lot of other draws on that money, but yeah, that would be an approach to do it, and we would just have to bring that policy back to your board for consideration.
I think that's. Was there any other public comment, Madam Clerk?
We do not have any online public comments.
And any other comments from directors? Questions, comments? Seeing none. I think that's. Pardon me. Yep, I think that's a great idea by Director Natoli, while at the same time you continue to explore, do some outreach and explore other things for a longer-term solution. But I think report back to this board, do some additional work and thought about this, and come back to us within the next few months, maybe the beginning of 2023, I think would be.
Mr. Chair, I would just think, because we right now with the SHRA program, there's a cap. We've had that discussion in recent months. We had, that there's been an accumulation, and you actually reported back to this board where we have, several hundred, if not more than 1,000 units available, and those are, standing ready to be issued to low-income or affordable developments. It seemed to me you could do this again. So far that I'm aware of, Robin's the one that's reached out to members of this board and certainly to her, planning jurisdiction. But you could cap it. You could start out small. You could do a calculation, set aside the money, assuming there was an interest in, in pursuing this. But I think it's very doable. I think you could do it pretty quickly. Get back to this board, because we have, as long as you have the money in the bank, and I think we do have sufficient reserves in the Confluence funds to do this. So again, just to Ms. Davis's point, she's been working on this for a couple of years. It's not solely with this district, but might be a way to get some more immediate relief for someone who wants to actually get their house permitted and get hooked onto the sewer. So.
All right. So I heard early next year we'll come back. In that time, we should be able to get in at least a meeting with planning directors. Yeah. Get some. I think we need to get some more information to better understand. Again, going back to what do the local jurisdictions want to do with this, and how does it proceed? Is it a subdivision full of tiny homes on tiny lots, or is that? I mean, I just don't have a sense of what it looks like. Then we can develop standards for how would we even serve an area like that, and then does it actually reduce costs? Because again, that's what we're trying to get to. In the meantime, we have this sort of a maybe less formal approach that could accomplish on a small scale. I think it could accomplish what you're getting at. So we can come back early next year with some ideas, given the conversations that we'll have in the meantime.
Yeah, just real quickly, Mr. Chair. I like that idea. I think the policy objective ought to include shared responsibility. Right? We cannot be the sole leaders in this. We need municipalities to be a partner. So if there is a structure whereby we can reduce associated costs with our fiduciary responsibility to manage this enterprise, cities and counties are going to have to be a partner in a real way, not just in a, yes, we'd like you to do that, reduce their fees, but there has to be some shared responsibility in that, assuming that there's shared interest in that objective. So I share that as a.
I like that. I think maybe something that's more of a matching reduction of fees based on what other fee reductions are occurring in the region. I think that would be a good way to approach it.
Okay, thank you. Well, there's no official board action on this item, so we'll move on to Sanitation District and Sewer District consent matters, item 6. Any questions or comments from directors on item 6? Seeing none, any public comment?
We do not have public comment.
Okay, I'd entertain a motion.
This is Hume. I'll move the item.
Chair will second. We got a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Member Bruins?
Aye.
Harris?
Aye.
Frost?
Aye.
Hume?
Aye.
Lalo'i?
Aye.
Singh Allen? Sander?
Aye.
Natoli?
Aye.
Orozco? Howell? Cerna?
Aye.
Valenzuela?
Yes.
Bang?
Yes.
Villegas?
Aye.
And Desmond?
Aye.
And the motion carries with those members present.
Okay, thank you. Move to item 7, districts, separate matters.
This is the miscellaneous director and district engineer matters.
Christoph?
Just two things. Next meeting, September 28th, is canceled, so our next meeting will be on October 12th. And I want to make one final call. We're looking for one more person for our governance committee. We would really like to have the city of Sacramento represented on that committee, but we haven't gotten any response yet. So if there is one of the city of Sacramento members that would like to participate, please email me and we'll get you included. We're trying to schedule those meetings right now. And the city of Sacramento has 5 members on the regional sand board. So I would say, in a sense, if you're talking about governance, that is they probably have the most to lose, I guess, along with the county in terms of the number of members. So please come join us.
Thank you, Chris. Not to put too fine a point on it. Okay, thank you. Anything else? That's it. Okay. Any comments from directors?
I do not see anyone with their hands raised, and we do not have any public comment for this item.
Okay, the last item is communications received and filed, and with that, I will adjourn the meeting at 10:44.
Thank you.